Welcome to yet another video in our How to Write Your Quantitative Methodology chapter for your dissertation. And we're calling this one How to Begin. Yeah, I almost named it Where to Start, but I feel that's a little bit different, right? You started when you decided you want to get your doctoral degree in whatever program you're working in, okay? But let's get going. Put in some pretty pictures. How to begin. It can be very confusing, okay? It's kind of daunting. Writing a dissertation, especially the methodology section, can be very, what's a good word? I like daunting, okay? We're going to stick with daunting. It's not easy. If it was, everybody would be doing it, but you're about to join the 1% club. So before I go on, I'm going to mention some disclaimers. Very important. Some dissertation committee members might want you to do something different than what I'm about to show you. Okay, that's perfectly cool, but whatever you do, just make sure you check with them beforehand, right? So it'll save you a ton of time to make sure that they know exactly what you're doing at all times. A big hint is maybe you can ask your chairperson or somebody on your committee if they have a dissertation template, somebody's dissertation that they really liked, and they say, oh, here, use this as a guideline, or anything like that. So again, your dissertation committee, they're there to help. All right, disclaimers are done. Let's get back to it. How to begin to write your methodology chapter for your quantitative dissertation. So first of all, your hypotheses should have been stated in the previous chapter, okay? So by the time the readers get to the methodology section, they know what your research questions are going to be. Here is a writing tip for general research writing up. Okay, so it's not just the research, it's your writing it up. That's the hard part. You got to write up what you did, and we're going to go into that here in a second. But here's a big tip on how to make this easier on yourself. Is what you should probably do is keep the end of the chapter in mind. In other words, we know what the end of the methodology chapter is going to say. You're going to have the results of your tests, okay? With that said, some professors want you to put the results in a different chapter, okay? But the way that I am lining this up is your methodology has all of your measurements, those are your surveys. You talk about your test, you talk about your sample population, and then at the very end of it, you put the results of the test. So that's the way I'm looking at it. A lot of teachers look at it that way, but again, some teachers prefer that you put the results in its own chapter, but that's up to you. All right, but again, keep the end in mind. When you're starting to write, keep the end in mind, right? What do you expect to finish with, right? How do you expect the results of these analyses to come out? When you're writing it up, and after you've done everything, you're going to tell everybody what you did, what kind of tests did you, how did you clean your data, that kind of stuff. And you're going to, at the end, you're going to tell them what you found or what you didn't find, right? Either way is good. So that's one huge tip there. All right, moving on. So the next tip is from a program director of mine, and she basically said, please tell everybody to make sure that they write in the past tense, because the methodology chapter is about what you did, and that is in the past tense. And if you have to change the tenses, that could take a while. So just remember, when you're writing this stuff up, you did it already, so make sure it's in the past tense. Don't start actually writing the methodology section in earnest until you're absolutely sure what you're going to be writing about, okay? Think about what you're going to write. So I always recommend everybody to do this. Boom. Make an outline. An outline. A good outline will save you hours, days, weeks, months. So make a good outline. Here's an example of an outline for the quantitative methodology chapter. It's real concise and clear. What you got to remember is at all times, keep it clear and organized. What you're going to write about here is the techniques, how, the what, the when, the where, of how you gathered your data and analyzed the data for your research. So I'm not going to go in a lot of detail here because I'm trying to keep these videos short. But Number 1, introduction to methodology. Explain what you're doing, what you're looking for. Number 2, research design. What kind of research design are you going to use, right? So correlational surveys, experimental, longitudinal, that kind of stuff. Justify why you picked this, and you're going to describe the participants. In other words, who is going to take your survey? Who are you researching? You're going to collect the data, and that usually means surveys. And then identify your variables and your measurements. Those come from the surveys, usually. And data analysis, which test are you going to run and why? And pre-processing, that means cleaning up the data. And you always have to clean up a lot of data, especially these days with the bots attacking these online surveys. It's a bad mark of the future, but it's real. Any kind of ethical considerations, limitations. Now, limitations can also go in your final chapter under conclusions. Some teachers would want you to do that. But then you write up, what did you find? What was significant? What was not significant? What does it mean? Remember, as you write, you wanna maintain clarity, coherence, and a logical flow throughout this entire chapter. Okay. But a good example is once you get an outline, you should probably show it to your committee members. Okay? If they like your outline, then you can follow it. Anybody reading this should be able to follow what you did, right? So it's kind of like a easy to follow mental roadmap. And again, we're going to make it easy to understand for just about anybody, right? Not just statisticians, not just business people, not just psychologists, but for anybody. So just a roadmap of your research, okay? The problem, what are your measurements? Which tests you're going to use, right? So conclusions, sample size, what kind of design you're using, all that kind of stuff. And again, it should be real easy to follow. All right, let's get on to the resources that you have available. I said this in one of the previous films, but your front line of resources should be your committee members, right? They're the ones. So just keep in mind that they're the ones that are either going to pass or fail you. So if they give you some suggestions, please do the suggestions, okay? So, and the Alliant Library, the librarian that Alliant has is a godsend. This person is so talented about data and information, but he's got literally thousands of online dissertations that you can use as a guideline. And they're free for Alliant students. You could download them through the library. And if you don't know how, just ask somebody that works there. They'll show you. In fact, they could find dissertations probably that are very close to what you're writing about. So you can see what other people did, how they did it, okay? Just to give you some ideas and some formatting issues, that kind of stuff. So it's just easy to look it up for yourself. And I feel another disclaimer coming on. So be careful. The Alliant Library guidelines, they're different than the APA guidelines, okay? And some chairs want you to follow the APA guidelines, while other chairs want you to follow the Alliant Library guidelines. So again, like always, check with your committee members. Check with them first. Ask them what kind of guidelines they want. And if they don't know what the difference is, that's a shame on them. They need to figure it out themselves, okay? So let's just keep moving on here. This is kind of a no-brainer. Make sure that you follow the APA manual, currently in the 7th edition. This is how long I've been at Alliant. When I started at Alliant, the APA, I believe it was its 2nd edition. So they keep changing it every couple of years. I couldn't tell the difference between the 7th and the 6th, but that's just me. So again, everything that you need to know for formatting, APA formatting, is in the book. You might be able to check one of these out at the library. They might have online versions. I'm not sure about that, but, look into it yourself. And for citations, this chapter right here is really good. The Journal Article Reporting Standards, right? It tells you how to cite everything from textbooks, from journals, online resources, everything. Chapter 3. That's your best friend there, okay? And APA book citations kind of looks like this. And all this makes me so glad that I'm not going to school anymore. I got to break some bad news for you. I know I mentioned tutors before, but as of right now, Blanket tutors cannot work on anybody's dissertation except for their own. And I'll say that again. Do not ask a tutor to help you with their dissertation. But again, with that said, I will. I don't know the writing part of it. I don't know APA very well, but I do know the stats. So with that said, I can work with you on your stats within reason. So if you need to find out why, watch the previous video. That's about all it is for that how to begin part. So that's it, folks. Now go ahead and take a deep breath and go get started. Da, 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 da. All right, thanks for listening. MGZ out.